Hello, I am Paul Miles. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Thursday Show. We are going through a series on Genesis, and today we will discuss days 3, 4, and 5 of creation. And then in the Q&A portion, we will be discussing archaeology and Noah's Ark. If you remember from our last episode, we had a memory trick for remembering the things that God created throughout the first 7 days. If you do not remember, or if you did not catch it, you can see it in the last episode, but we'll go through it really quickly. So day 1, God created light and matter. Day 2, God created an expanse, separating the waters above from the waters below, creating the expanse above. Day 3, God separated the water from the land and created vegetation. Day 4, God created the celestial bodies. Day 5, God created the fish of the sea and the birds of the air. And day 6, God created land animals, Adam and Eve. And then day 7, God rested. He stopped creating. All right. So today we're going to go through 3, 4, and 5. But first, I will read Genesis 1:1 through Genesis 1:10. All right. So, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water. That's where we get this idea of God creating all the matter. There's a big bubbly, watery depth out there in the universe. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the expanse and separated the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so. So God takes this big, deep abyss of water and sends matter way out there, far, far away. God called the expanse heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. Notice, God did not call day 2 good. He started an expansing, a spreading out motion. But then we will see that he completes part of this here in day 3. Now we're in Genesis 1:9, which is day 3. Then God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. Then God saw that it was good. Okay, so here we are into the third day already. God has separated the waters from the land, and then he calls it good. It is, there's a question, right? So God has gathered the waters together, and we have dry land. So does this imply that there was once one giant landmass on Earth that has since then separated into continents? It's difficult to tell from the text. It's possible that there was only one landmass here, or it's possible that there were several. Could be that he gathered together several seas, several lakes, rivers, whatnot have you. But today, the earth is significantly different. This is because of the flood, which occurs a few chapters later. Big spoiler alert for you if you haven't read Genesis, which if you haven't, then do. But the earth as we look at it today is completely different from the earth as it was back then. We can't just walk outside and step onto the ground where Adam walked because of the flood. There is this theory of Pangea, which is based on the spreading of the continents at the current rate that they are today. I don't think that we can support Pangea necessarily from this text, I would tend to say that the separation of the tectonic plates, there's probably a lot of tectonic activity that was going on during the flood. So this beautiful world that God created was damaged severely during the flood. So did God create one landmass, two, three, several? Don't know. It's not evident in the text. Okay, verse 11. Then God said, let the earth produce vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth yielding fruit after their kind, with seed in them. Okay. So this is the introduction of the Hebrew word mean, which is translated here as kind. A mean is a created kind, and on secular taxonomies, which assumed that all of life is somehow or another related, the level of family, more or less, will align with the mean. A mean is a created kind. So God created, for example, a horse kind. Within that horse kind, today we have donkeys, zebras, horses of all sorts of different types, right? That would all be one kind. So while we reject the idea of macroevolution, what is macroevolution? Macro means big, evolution means evolving into different forms. So macroevolution would be this idea that we started out as a different kind of animal and eventually evolved and improved into humans. We would disagree with that notion. I believe that God created kinds, including a human kind, which we will see in day 6. Within the kinds, there are indeed variations, which we could describe as microevolution. Right? Nobody is denying that there are variations within kinds. And indeed, the variations, the evolution, can actually be accelerated if intelligent design is applied to them, right? Think about, well, goodness, we're in day 3 here, so let's think about plants, right? Consider the wild strawberry as compared to the domestic strawberry. Domestic strawberry tastes a lot better than the wild one does. You can eat the wild one, but it's not going to be that kind of delicious. Well, that's because humans have gotten in and they've hacked the hybriding system over the course of several generations, and we're able to improve, to use selection to get plants, the ones that we like the most, which happen to be the ones that make the biggest and the best strawberries. And so it is in the animal world as well, right? We have designer dogs. Some evil genius somewhere decided that we needed to go ahead and breed Chihuahuas to have these annoying little rat-looking dogs. They're not of the rat kind; they are of the dog kind. However, this is not necessarily evident to the naked eye. The Chihuahua is certainly an ornery one, but the Chihuahua is in the same kind as the Great Dane. There's a huge variation there, but these two variations have come out somewhat recently in human history. So there can be great variations within the kinds, but there are certainly limits. You can't breed a Chihuahua as small as a fly. Eventually, small dogs start having serious problems the smaller they get. And there are upper limits. You can get a big Great Dane. You can get a dog that's just an absolute beast and huge, but he'll never become the size of an elephant. There are certain restrictions in play there. And you'll certainly never get a dog to breed into a non-dog. Can't make him into a cat. Can't make him into a banana. Okay, so mean. By the way, we have a field of study called baraminology. Bara means created. So bara mean, it's like a created kind, ology, the study of. So baraminology is the study of and the identification of created kinds. And there's been a lot of really interesting research done on this front in recent decades. people doing baromenological distance measuring, looking at different aspects of different created living beings to determine, are they the same kind or are they different kinds? Fun thing to Google sometime if you're ever interested. Baromenology. Moving along. So God said, let the earth produce vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth yielding fruit after their kind, with seed in them. So day 3, God creates plants that already have seeds in them, in the fruit. Okay. So God created mature plants. This is a point where people start to attack the recent creationist perspective, which would say that the earth is relatively young. They say, oh, no, you terrible, you are making God into a deceiver because he created old plants recently. Okay, that's not entirely correct, right? What we do see is that he created the kind with the seeds in them. So the plant is mature. We will tend to look at a mature plant today and assume that it is an old plant. Why? Because whenever you see a mature plant in the current rate of things, it took a while for the plant to get there. Same with people or animals as well. So if we had a time machine and we went back to the Garden of Eden, if we went back to this creation week, we went back to day 3, a time traveler might see a big tree with a big tree trunk, and it would be a mature tree. It would have fruit with seeds in it. And if all that we had today, if he took a picture and then sent it back to the future, we looked at it, we'd say, oh, well, that's a 100-year tree right there. But it wouldn't be. If you were to cut into the tree, then you might be surprised at the lack of season rings within the trunk that form as the tree gets bigger, right? We get those whenever there's a change of season, which is not necessarily on an annual basis, by the way. So God did not put mature trees there to confuse anybody. And by the way, all the trees that were there are now deceased. He put Adam and Eve in the garden eventually, and he walked with them in the cool of the day. So I'm sure if Adam said, oh, wow, this tree looks like it's 100 years old because of the rate of growth, I'm sure God could have corrected him. But Adam knew full well that the earth was young. So I don't think God really had to explain that to him. And it was so. The earth produced vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, and trees yielding fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the 3rd day. By the way, plants are not nefesh chaya. They are not living beings. They don't have the breath of life in them in their nostrils. So it is okie dokie artichoke, no pun intended, for man to be eating plants in a world that God designed and called good. So the evening and the morning were the 3rd day. All right, pretty easy. So day 3, God creates, separates the water from the land and brings out plant life. Day 4, I'll pick up in Genesis 1:14. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs to indicate seasons and days and years. Okay, now that's a bit of a funky translation. I have retranslated it to this from the Hebrew, looking at the lamed prefix that occurs. We might translate that as, let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Okay, so we have 3 purposes: for signs, for seasons, and for days and years. Signs, I think, is in reference to, for example, navigation. Whenever navigators of old. I say old as if this was a long time ago. It really isn't. It was in very recent history that navigators still use the stars. If you look at airplanes from the 20th century, oh goodness, where was I? This was a military museum in Ukraine, and I was there, and there was another American veteran who was Vietnam era, and he worked in the Navy during the Cold War, and so his expertise was actually spotting Soviet airplanes, right? And we go to this museum, and it's a military museum, and there's Soviet stuff all over the place. And I'm looking at the bombs, like, okay, these are the bombs that we had in Iraq being used against us. And he was like, oh, yeah, these are the planes being used in the Cold War against us, right? Fun trip. Anyhow, so as recently as the Soviet Union, as well as the American counterparts at the time, if you go into the planes, you will see a little window dome above the navigator's spot where the plane's navigator would sit. And the gentleman who knew planes a lot better than I did said, you know what that is? That is a window so that the navigators could look up at the stars and use them for navigation to steer the plane. So stars have been a means of navigation for a very long time. Of course, now we have GPS and all that stuff. The average Joe on the street doesn't know how to read a map as well as the average Joe on the street knew about 20 some odd years ago, just because we don't really use it. So let the stars be for signs, right? We use them to navigate and whatnot. And for seasons, right? So seasons you can look at the stars and tell by which constellations are flying around at night, what time of year it is. Okay. If it's getting to be time to start planting, you got the stars to kind of support that. Know that it's not just a nice warm week during the winter, so that if you put your seeds in the ground, they're all going to freeze out next week. No, you got the stars for that. And for days and years. So here's one where we have the lamed prefix prior to days, yomim, and years. So I would take that as being one prefix trying to group these two together. Alternatively, sometimes at the end of a list, you just got a different structure. So it could be and for days and years are a different category, but I would say days and years are being clumped together here by Moses in order to basically talk about measuring time, right? Measuring days and years as a way of measuring time. All right, Genesis 1:15, let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. So notice that there is a stated purpose here of the celestial bodies being there for the benefit of earth. God has not yet put man on the planet yet. We're still on day 4. As far as I can tell, though, plants don't use the stars for navigation, right? Nor do animals. So I think God already had man in mind when he was putting these things into play. And it was so. Verse 16, God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Then God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. Then God saw it was good. So the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Okay. So this is another day of formation. God did not here create the planets ex nihilo. He had already created the matter on day 1. Day 2, he flung it out there. And then here we are on day 4, and he is forming the stars and everything out there. Another point is that notice that the plants were created on day 3, but the sun was created on day 4. We can use this to support that day 3 was a relatively short time, 24-hour period. Otherwise, how would the plants be able to survive without light? Now, it's possible that God had a local light source that was keeping the plants alive and or lit. However, I don't think that our old Earth friends are saying that's how it went down. If I have someone who is from the old Earth perspective on day 3, who wants to speak to that, I'll be sure to bring it up next time we're in a conversation, hopefully in a way that's not awkward. Sometimes whenever you bring this up, people get all offended really easily. We shouldn't be offended. This is theology, right? Okay. Oh my goodness, this is bad. So we just finished the 4th day, and I'm looking at my clipboard, and the text of day 5 has been cut off. Fortunately, I have a Bible on hand, so we're just going to have to open up old school, read it straight from the biblical text. All right. Genesis 1:20. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." There we go again. So the word expanse, remember we discussed this. The flat earth theologians want us to think that the word expanse actually means a firm dome, because the word is firmament in the King James. Ha ha ha, you silly fundamentalist, you don't you know the earth is not surrounded by a dome? To which my answer is no, that's not what the Bible says. The word is archaea. We discussed this earlier, I believe, in episode 2. But here we have a clear indication that the biblical authors were not thinking that this was a firm dome, right? Genesis 1:20. God said, "Let the birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens," the open firmament. Now, if the biblical authors thought that this was a firm thing, then they would not believe that birds can fly in a firm thing, right? They'd get stuck in there, and they might be able to try to wiggle around and cheep and chirp for help, but nope. No flying in a firm thing. You need an expanse with air so you can spread your wings and fly, you beautiful eagle, you. Genesis 1:21. God created great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind. There is our word mean again. And every winged bird after its kind, and God saw it was good. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and we'll read a little bit further. We'll finish the day. Verse 22, God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." See that God puts here a mandate for multiplying and filling even among the animals. And he gave seeds to the plants with this idea of multiplying and filling the earth. Oh, this would have been a beautiful thing to behold. And there was evening, and there was morning, a 5th day. Okay, so we get on day 5 the sea creatures and the birds. Now, let's talk about a couple of controversial things. Day 6, excuse me, is when we get the land animals. So, on what day was the box turtle created? Well, the box turtle is a land animal, so he was created on day 6. Okay, what then about the sea turtle? The sea turtle appears to be a sea creature, hence its name, which would lend us to believe that it was day 5. However, they're also somewhat on the land, right? Baby turtles always being born on the beach. People gathered around rooting for the baby turtles. Make it to the sea, make it. Keeping all the birds away as they try to pluck them away as these brave turtles make it to the sea, only to be eaten by sea life, right? Okay, the Bible does not say, and the sea turtle was invented on this date. It could be that God created the sea turtle on day 5 as a sea creature. It could be that he created him on day 6 as a land creature. We don't know. And if you ever want to have fun, ask this question when you have two creationists and then walk away as they start to fight with each other. It'll be fun, I promise. Okay, so it's possible that we have some animals that we don't know precisely. Are they land creatures? Are they sea creatures? What then about birds? So the Hebrew word for bird is oph, which comes from the verb uf, to fly. So literally a bird in Hebrew is a flying creature, which makes sense because most of the things that fly are birds. Most of the birds that are fly. But we have some exceptions. Leviticus 11. Oh, goodness. My notes did not print. I believe it's verse 19. But in Leviticus 11, we have a list of animals that are clean and unclean, right? And God lists birds that are unclean. Hebrew, oph. And amongst the birds, what does he list? The bat. Oh, you silly biblicist, don't you know? The bat is not a bird. So the Bible is just riddled with errors, and we need to go ahead and realize that God doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. Let's go and build a Marxist utopia here and now, blah, 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 whatever. No. That's nonsense, right? Even if the Bible was not inspired, if it was only a human book, which it's not, it's inspired, surely the human author would have realized, okay, there's a difference between a bat and a hawk, right? The bat doesn't have feathers. But the division there is the oph. It's not talking about the feathered beings, but rather the flying beings, right? So on what day was the oph, the bat, created? I would argue that it was created here on day 5 as a flying creature. Okay, what about this category? What about penguins and ostriches? All right, now we have the feathered creatures, which we would currently classify as birds. However, they are flightless birds. All right, now we get into a little more disagreement here, right? A lot of people would say, okay, those are birds. Look at the feathers, for crying out loud. Those are a day 5 creature. I would argue, no, these are not day 5 creatures. I'm sorry, these are not day 5 creatures. These are day 6 creatures because these are land animals. Unless you want to argue that a penguin is a water animal, which I don't think it would quite meet those qualifications. They do like to swim, and it's ridiculously cute when they do. So I would say then, so taking my bat thing, the bat is a mammal that was created amongst the flying animals on day 5. The penguin and the ostrich and flightless birds were land animals that we would classify as birds today, but they would be classified as the land animal for a day 6 creation. And if you disagree with me about that and think that the bat was a day 6 creation and the penguin was a day 5 creation, then okay, no big deal, right? All right, now for the real controversial one. They have discovered dinosaurs that appear to have feathers. There are a lot of people who would say, no, those are not feathers. You are misreading it. You are trying to force evolution into the fossil record. And evolution, they do indeed force into this. They say, aha, see, dinosaurs with feathers. That means that birds evolved into lizards, or lizards evolved into birds. I think it's the other way that they're saying that dinosaurs turned into birds. So if you have a chicken today, his great grandma was a lizard or something of the sort, right? Okay. Supposing feathered dinosaurs did indeed exist, and I'm okay with saying that they did, does that support evolution? No, not at all, right? All that means is that God created kinds of animals that had certain characteristics that are more characteristic of birds and certain characteristics that are more characteristic of reptiles. That is not a problem, right? God can make all sorts of crazy kinds. Look at the platypus, for example. Now, that is an animal that has certain characteristics that we typically only see in the bird world and certain characteristics that we only typically see in the mammal world. But God put characteristics of both of them into one created kind. This is not at all a problem for us. It is a problem for evolution, by the way, right? Because now you got to figure out how it is that a duckbill managed to survive into the animal kingdom, right? Very, very problematic. So it's not problematic really if there are feathered dinosaurs. Now, a lot of the feathered dinosaur hype that we got going on, you'll watch movies about dinosaurs, fictionalized ones. And it's unfortunate because they'll often try to put feathers onto dinosaurs that even the paleontologists would say we don't have any evidence that that particular animal had feathers. But they're trying to put feathers on these dinosaurs in order to promote this evolutionary thought that feathers developed on lizards, and that's how we ended up with feathered birds today. So, where would those guys go? Day 5 or day 6? Well, if they flew, day 5. If they walked, I would put them in day 6. Pterodactyls, with or without feathers, day 5, because they would fly. Though I suppose since a penguin is a feathered animal that swims, maybe they would have feathered dinosaurs that were water creatures. I don't think that's right. But if there were water creatures with feathers, it'd be a day 5 creation as well. So, very easy to divide those up. Current issues that people are always trying to twist around and make into proof for evolution. Typically, whenever you dig into it, even if it is legitimate, it really doesn't provide any kind of problem for our perspectives. Okay, time for the question and answer section. Question. Jan from Poland asks, sometimes we can see articles that someone has found Noah's Ark, usually somewhere in the Ararat Mountains. Did archaeologists find something that could fit biblical descriptions of the Ark? Thank you for asking, Jan. In short, the answer is no, archaeologists have not found the Ark. Now, there have been 5 proposed locations that are rather well known for the Ark. The Ark Encounter, which is a project of Answers in Genesis. It's the group that built a giant model of the Ark over there in Kentucky. These are the good guys, right? These are the Ark's friends. If the Ark had been found, these are the guys that you would anticipate would love to talk about it. However, they are suspicious of these 5 sites, and they have written a blog series about this. You can go to their website, arkencounter.com, and search, has the Ark been found? And they'll talk about each of these in more depth and detail and give you some good links and whatnot. But since the Ark Encounter, being Ark's friend, is saying that we don't have an Ark available to us that we can point to, I think that's a bit of an indicator. Now, if the liberals, right, or if the people that denied the existence of the Ark altogether were saying it, I'd say, yeah, you deny the Ark. If we did find the Ark, you'd find a way around it. Not the good guys, though, right? So I looked into this a bit myself to see what's going on. It looks like we've got these 5 locations, which have been proposed as locations for the ark. Now, 3 of these 5 are located on Mount Ararat. Okay, so let's look at Genesis 8:4. It says, the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. So the ark landed in the Ararat Mountains, which is a mountain range, a group of mountains. However, it is unlikely that it landed on Mount Ararat. It seems that this particular mountain, Mount Ararat, which was one of the mountains in the Ararat Mountains, was actually formed after the floodwaters had already receded. If it did land there, then it's likely that the ark would have been destroyed over the course of history as the mountains changed. There's also been a lot of volcanic and seismic activity over the years. So, for example, on July 2nd, 1840, Mount Ararat had a particularly ugly volcanic explosion, which there's also perhaps an associated earthquake of magnitude 7.4 that killed 10,000 people, right? So Mount Ararat's constantly blowing up and having earthquakes and stuff. So if the ark was indeed on Mount Ararat or near it, it's very likely that the ark would have been destroyed by now. So if you blow a bunch of volcanic lava on a giant wooden structure, it's likely to burn. And there it goes. Another proposal is on Mount Suleiman, but that particular formation is probably a geologic formation of rock layers instead of a wood formation. So some folks found some rock layers that looked like it was kind of boat-shaped, and now the guys that found that, they're taking a high view of scripture, but I think they're getting a little overmotivated, thinking, oh wow, is this it? Is this it? This must be it. No, I'm afraid they found something that might be shaped like a boat, but it's not actually a boat. Now, there's another one. An archaeologist named Ron Wyatt has a spot in Durupinar, which he has claimed is the ark. Now, I don't like going ad hominem and talking about the men. However, I do think that Ron Wyatt is one that we need to exercise caution of. This is the same Ron Wyatt who claims that God showed him the Ark of the Covenant, that he took a blood sample from the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant, right? So the Ark of the Covenant from the temple, which has been missing for thousands of years, this guy says that God showed it to him, that there was blood on the mercy seat, and that he took a sample of that blood because it would be the blood of Christ, he says. And then he did a test on this blood and found that the blood sample only had 24 chromosomes instead of 46. These are his words. He says, all of us have 46 chromosomes unless we have Down syndrome, which is a syndrome which, you're missing a chromosome. Christ had 24 chromosomes, that is. Each parent supplies 23 chromosomes to the new infant. Christ got 23 from his mother. He got 1 from his father, and it was a Y, which made him a male. He got it not from an earthly father, or he would have 46, like the rest of us. Now, to say that Jesus had 24 chromosomes, by the way, it's interesting that he admits that God gave Jesus at least 1 chromosome, a Y, to make him a male. But to say that Jesus only had 24 chromosomes. Now, if you or I had 24 chromosomes, we would not live. We would be dead. Okay. Down syndrome is unfortunate in that there are, we call them the lucky few who are able to live life with Down syndrome because it's such a high fatality syndrome. I like to call it, I had a friend who said it was the syndrome of kindness, because so many of our friends with Down syndrome are just so loving. I love people with Down syndrome. They're great. But that's the result of one missing chromosome. If you're missing as many as Ron Wyatt says that Jesus was missing, then he would not be fully man. Okay. To deny the full humanity of Christ is a very serious matter. So, in addition to being a fake archaeologist and, in my opinion, a flat out liar, Ron Wyatt is a heretic who denies the full deity of Christ. This is the guy who has proposed that Mount Suleiman is the location of the ark. Okay, so he's a fake archaeologist and a heretic. That does not disprove that this is the location of the ark. However, several geologists who are young earthers who believe in a global flood, right, from the same perspective as us here at the Thursday show, the good guys all went out to look at it and they're like, nah, this is just another geological formation. In fact, if you go to the post in the blog series by the Ark Encounter that I mentioned earlier, you can take a look at their post about this particular one, and they have a link to the Google Maps where you can get a closer look at this particular formation. And if you kind of zoom around a little bit, you'll find that there are actually several formations just like this one. This wasn't caused by a giant boat landing there, as much as I would love that to be the case, because it would be a great support of our view. That would, finding the ark would just be the archaeological find of archaeological finds, man. Oh, I would love it. We all would. Ark Encounter guys would love it too. But the fact is, that's not the find that Ron Wyatt has there. You'll find other similar phenomenon around there. I believe it was Andrew Snelling that said, yeah, that's the formation that occurs whenever you have big rocks and mud flowing around it. So just a natural occurrence, no ark as of yet. So I want to close with a quote. This is from Brian Thomas at his article, Did Someone Really Find Noah's Ark? This is from the Institute for Creation Research website, icr.org. These are also the good guys. These are the guys who are researching to support a recent creation with a global flood. These are the guys that would love more than anyone if we could find the ark archaeologically. Sadly, it seems that's not the case, though. All right. So Brian Thomas writes, we don't yet have Noah's Ark, and it looks unlikely to turn up. But the good news is we don't need the Ark to believe Genesis. We already have a world full of rock layers and fossils from the flood. God has given us every reason to trust him and his word, even the parts about Noah's Ark. So, as much as I would love a discovery of the Ark, as we all would, it doesn't seem like that is going to happen. It doesn't seem like that has happened, but we don't need that. We can trust God's word fully because God wrote it, and we have several other points of evidence to support our claims with. Thank you so much for asking. This has been season 2, episode 3 of the Thursday show. I look forward to our upcoming episodes when we will go through the rest of the creation week and further along in Genesis. Thank you so much for tuning in.